Good morning. We are going to pause here for just a couple minutes, and as people are rolling in, welcome this morning. Glad to see you all joining us. Looking forward to a great morning of content here for you that I hope is going to be encouraging and helpful and give you some inspiration in your job search. Waiting here just another moment as people continue to roll in. Glad to have you all join us. All right, we'll get started, and as people continue to come in, my name is 𝙉𝙙𝙫𝙤𝙜𝙖, and I lead Minnesota Crossroads Career Network here in the Minneapolis area. I know some of you on our webinars that we have people that join us from around the country, so welcome. I hope it's a beautiful day wherever you are today. It's really nice outside here today in the Minneapolis area. It's I think we're supposed to get rain later, but for right now it's sunny and blue sky, and always appreciate that. Glad you're here this morning, and you're here to registered in order to hear Nicole Centanni, and I'm really looking forward to having her do her presentation this morning. It should be really informative and helpful for you to be able to progress in your job search effectively. But got a little bit of content before that. I just want to share a couple of things, and then we've got a short video for you. And then after Nicole's done with her presentation, I want to give you an overview of everything else we have available through Crossroads, all free for you, and have you take advantage of those things that can make a difference for you in your search. Our hope with Crossroads is that along with helping people succeed in their job search, we also talk about bigger issues and point to the hope and encouragement of Jesus Christ. And one thing I see very often is that people try to go through life on their own, especially when they may be going through a difficult time like a job search. They often get more isolated, staring at a computer screen all day instead of talking to real live people. And life wasn't meant to be done without the support of others. We're meant to support each other and to care for each other and to encourage each other. There's a passage in scripture that actually says, do not neglect to meet together as is the habit of some, but encourage one another. In life, a church home can be a great resource of wisdom and biblical teaching and spiritual growth, however, also support and hope throughout your life. In a job search, seeking help from others and building community with groups like Crossroads can be a great resource and provide moral support to find your next position. This is enough of an emotional roller coaster without trying to go through it alone. With all the things that Crossroads offers, this is a great time to participate in a community and be encouraged. Don't do it alone. Plugging into groups like this can help. At the end of our presentation, as I mentioned earlier, I'll tell you about the other ways you can engage, and I hope you take advantage of that. Let me open in a word of prayer, and then, as I mentioned, I have a short film that I hope is going to be hopeful and encouraging for you as well. Lord, thank you for bringing us together as always on these webinars, even though we don't see each other and can't communicate as effectively with each other as we would in person. We pray that you use it for your purposes, that everyone is blessed here today, that they walk away with something that is useful and helpful in their current circumstances. And more importantly, Lord, that they hear from you in some way as well. Father, we thank you for this time, and we pray that it honors you in Jesus' name. Amen. With that, I wanted to, let me share my screen here. Give me a moment. And 𝙉𝙙𝙫𝙖𝙫𝙖, I don't know if you are familiar with him or not, but he is an actor and a Navy SEAL, and has had quite a life. And his story, I think, is encouraging to, first of all, put things in perspective sometimes, that there's many things we all go through that he's gone through, and there's some things that were tough for him, and hopefully you get a perspective that's inspiring for you.
When I was a kid, my mom would take my brother and I to the movies. It was somewhat of a pastime for us to detach from our life and enter into this new world through film for 2 hours. right in the center. When this movie by the name of Bad Boys came out, which was directed by Michael Bay. That was the first movie I remember seeing where there were two heroes who looked like me, and they weren't playing thugs or gangsters or drug dealers, but instead they were playing heroes who were essentially running, gunning, and saving the day. A year later, Michael Bay's second film, The Rock, came out, and that was the first time I was exposed to Navy SEALs. And I was just blown away by this portrayal of men who were coming out of the water and going into this place to go sacrifice themselves to save others. That really resonated with me, and I thought, if I was to ever turn my life around, that's what I would do.
That's all yours now.
Yeah. I don't know. He's gone.
See what happens.
Ever since I was young, I always wanted to control things. When I would want something, I would literally, if I had to, I would run through walls to get it. I've always felt like I needed to be the one to make things happen in my life. And it's hard for me to trust people or to trust something outside of me. Through culture and music, I was constantly bombarded with this message that said, you're a young African-American male. You need to be a hustler, or you need to be a thug, or you need to be a player. And because I didn't have a positive male role model to tell me otherwise, to say, no, this is not what a man is, this is what a man is. I started out stealing from my mom, that progressed to running scams, and that progressed to selling drugs. And when my father died, I took in any and everything that I felt would satisfy that paternal void, that would teach me how to be a man. One day I was laying in bed and this voice, whatever it was a voice to me, but it just kept on pressing upon me that I needed to join the military. I needed to get out of New York, and joining the military was what I needed to do. There's not many jobs out there where you can get paid to, jump out of planes and go after bad guys and protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Essentially be that guy who stood in the face of bullies and said, not on my watch. My acting coach, he trained under Stella Adler, and Stella Adler was a proponent for actors getting out of their environment and traveling the world, seeing different cultures, tasting different foods, experiencing love, experiencing pain, experiencing all these experiences that life has to offer, and then taking those experiences and cataloging them so that actor is able to pull from those experiences to bring the character to life. I went to cold weather survival training in Alaska. And while I would walk through this wilderness, I really had time to reflect upon myself in the silence, because it was completely silent out there. I began to think about how I treated my mom and how I treated people I claimed I loved. And I would think about things that I did in the past, and I still yearned for that paternal presence. I couldn't really sleep, and then I began to have suicidal thoughts. I was at the lowest point I had ever been in my entire life. I didn't know anything about the Bible, but by a simple ounce of faith, I literally began to cry out to Jesus. Literally began to cry out to Jesus. Help me, Jesus, help me. Then I began to surround myself around Christians who didn't just read the Bible, but they actually lived the Bible. And I began to pray, and all I wanted to do was be with him and do for him and forsake that life I used to live and live this new life with him. My whole life was dramatically changed,
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for flying with us. Please make sure your seatbelts.
Just like I felt God tell me, you need to join the military, I felt God pressing upon me the importance of, it's time for you to get out of the military. It's time for you to move on. I have something else for you. I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills. I was expecting to have all these opportunities for speaking engagements because I got into speaking, and that didn't happen. The phones didn't ring. I began to get really nervous because I knew that I had only about 6 months of savings. I have a wife, and she's pregnant with our first son. We're just barely scraping through. Like, we're living paycheck to paycheck. I had financial problems, and then to compound the financial problems, we had significant marriage problems, and the marriage problems were so bad, we both contemplated getting a divorce. It just didn't work out the way I expected it, and when it didn't work out, I got so frustrated. There was a point where I got mad at God. I hear you wrong. Was I supposed to get out of the military? Was I supposed to make that decision? It was silence. It was silence. Around that time, I received a phone call from a lady who I worked with years prior. She cast me in a TV show by the name of The Last Ship, you know, back in 2013 for a day of filming. And she said, well, I've been trying to, you know, find you for this movie that starts filming tomorrow. And I was like, okay, what movie is that? She said, well, it's Transformers. Started out as a day player. 2 weeks later, I was called back for 3 more weeks of filming. I started to get lines from the director, which was unusual for me because I was like, wow, I'm just a, you know, background extra. They said to me, hey, the director wants to upgrade you to a principal role. Are you available to film for the rest of production? And I said, absolutely. The director happened to be Michael Bay. It's the same one who inspired me to be a SEAL. You know, when you look at my story going from the Bronx to the military, into special operations, out of that, in a marriage, being a husband, being a father, and then now having a career in acting and in the film industry. There's one word I could sum it up with, is God. And so he's been with me throughout my entire life. He's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And he's used it all to bring me to where I'm at today. I don't want to force things anymore. I just want to allow God to do whatever it is that he wants to do in my life. If he wants to take me out of this acting career next week, then so be it. If he wants me to get back into the military, so be it. If he wants me to go into ministry full-time, so be it. If he wants me to take up a job, I don't know, as a pilot or whatever, so be it. Because I know that his plan is better than any plan that I could ever have. And even though his plan may not make sense to me, within his plans is everything that I need and everything that is not just good for me, but good for my family as well.
You know, just because we follow Christ doesn't mean that we won't have problems in our lives or that things won't go awry at times, but he does promise he'll never leave us, never forsake us, that we can, and that his plans are better for us, whether it looks exactly the way we think our plans should be or not. His plans are definitely better. Hope you got some thoughts out of that will help you navigate going through your job search. Speaking of which, that's Navigating Layoffs and Career Uncertainty is the title of Nicole's presentation. I'm glad to have her join us. She is currently the Associate Director for Alumni Career Coaching and Transitions for the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Management. And she has been in career services for a long time and knows what she's talking about. And I know that she'll have some great information and hope for you in this in terms of how to do your search effectively. Nicole, thanks for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the invitation to join you today. And I am really looking forward to our conversation. I'm just going to pull up my slides here and we will get going. Like Harry said, I am a career coach. I have been doing career coaching in some capacity for almost 15 years and teach a career theory course at the graduate school at Bethel University, and also have done a lot of work around well-being and teaching. So this topic is near and dear to my heart. Like Harry said, currently I'm working at the University of Minnesota Carlson School of Management, and our Carlson alumni have lifetime access to career coaching. And so a lot of the conversations I'm having on a daily basis are people who've experienced a layoff or are in the midst of career transition or kind of navigating some type of career uncertainty. And so hearing these stories on a daily basis is impacting the way that I come to you this morning. And the content that I'm using, a lot of the concepts are the work that my colleagues and I are doing at the Carlson School of Management. So I'm wanting to give credit where credit's due there. But I wanted to start with just thinking about transition. And when we experience transition, it often feels like something's been like cut off from us. And sometimes we choose that, like we make a pivot, and or there's just like the natural life progression. And sometimes it feels like something's been cut off from us. But I am just kind of acknowledging as we start that we all have this, whether it's in career specifically, which will be the focus of our conversation today, but just in general, transition in the way that I think about it is connected to something. So we've lost something, and change can be hard that way. So today, as you jump into our call, you might find yourself in like career uncertainty where you're like, I'm not sure. It seems like things are being cut around me, or some branches have been cut. I'm experiencing some like kind of small, medium-sized transition, or perhaps you're coming into this call today with like, I'm feeling like this stump in the last picture, like a lot has been cut and there's like a lot of change. Either way, there's, and again, this is part of the human experience that we have transition that can feel like something's been cut off. And a big focus of my presentation today is what is happening under the surface and our root system that are like where we're grounded. That part has not been changed, even if like circumstantially branches or the trunk look different right now. And so I want to focus on just like the nourishing those roots during times of transition. And I wish I could offer you an easy button or a crystal ball, or like, here's where I'm hiring, or here's where all the jobs are, or that if you do all the right things that you'll have 100% satisfaction. I know that is not the case. So I also just want to acknowledge that like the job search, especially in a tough job market, is hard, and really want to focus on two things today. So mechanics, which are really important in the search to have kind of those right things, but really emphasizing mindset and nourishing that root system as you navigate change. Okay, so during our time together, I want to offer a little context and then 5 areas of focus when navigating uncharted waters. And then certainly leave time for questions. And Harry's going to help me out in the chat for that. So just a little context, we're not alone. It's estimated that 40% of the US workforce will experience a layoff at some point in their careers. There's significant factors impacting our current employment landscape, and we want to just be mindful of what is in our control and what is not. And so I think it's important to just acknowledge the landscape that is influencing the job market right now. I'm not going to focus on that a ton because I don't have that crystal ball, and it is like an ever-changing landscape, and it is really can be industry specific. And I recognize that the people on this call are coming in from all different industries. Okay, so as I think about navigating our way forward during times of transition, I think of this as like, do you remember in psychology class learning about Maslow's hierarchy of needs? We have to start with those like kind of like basic pieces. Like we need food, shelter, rest before we can like build up this pyramid. So I'm thinking about this pyramid in this way. So starting with this daily the life dashboard, which again, my colleagues at the Carlson Center, we've kind of developed this model to think about change together. But we got to start with facts first. So if you've just experienced a layoff, understanding your severance package, your benefit options, typically severance is 1 to 2 weeks for each year of service, but that really can vary depending on organization. Knowing your financial runway. So getting kind of those like financials in place, I think is, as I talk with people experiencing job transition, feels like a really important, like got to start with the facts here. And processes like filing for unemployment, things like that. Then reviewing your daily routines and deciding what should stay and what should change for stability, ease, and practicality. Those are the 3 words that I think can be such an important guide as you think about that, that first layer. I'm not sure what happened there. So yeah, being guided by stability, ease, and practicality. So what are those daily routines that stay and what change, especially if your daily life structure has changed, if you've experienced a layoff. So looking at the calendar for the next few months and making a list of possible shifts, then of course editing as we go. So that would be like ground level, getting those facts together. And then tending to your mind, body, and spirit, or as I'm referencing for today, that root system, and putting a lot of investment there. So I think just starting with acknowledging the range of emotions and allowing yourself to mourn the loss of whatever that chapter was. And I think that work is really critical to acknowledge that. And with the job seekers that I'm connected to, sometimes it feels like this like relief, like it's been a really volatile job and there's relief, but even within the relief, change is hard. And for others, it is like the rug just got ripped out. And there's so much grief of maybe even how it was handled or the kind of the loss of what that opportunity was. And so I just have a change is hard period. And even like really good welcomed change just comes with some hard things. So definitely want to acknowledge that. And I have a lot of empathy for that in my own life as I experience transition, but as I hear people's career stories on a daily basis. And then activating your best routines for self-care to nourish that root system. So things that we know, of course, sleep, exercise, nutrition, but this is the time to like double down on those routines. I love how Crossroads really incorporates faith and investing in your faith and spiritual practices. I mean, I think about my own life and the times that I've been, that I've really grown the most. It is during seasons of being stretched and seasons where there is uncertainty. And that has really fortified my faith, even in like the discomfort of that. So I'm saying this to myself during times of transition, but staying open to invitations to grow, because it can be so easy to focus on the external change and miss the opportunities for growth in that. And again, as I say that, I know when I've experienced especially something unexpected, I'm like needing to remind myself of like kind of a posture towards growth because I want to control my circumstances. I think this piece of remembering the difference between role and identity is really important because when those two are conflated, when we have a role change, if we let that seep into, if our role is also how we see and view our identity, that the conflation of those two, I think, can be tricky. So really separating, like our identity is not rooted in roles that we hold because roles are ever changing, but our identity is constant and stays the same. And that piece doesn't shift. And so if you catch yourself, this would be like a mindset piece, really grasping onto roles for identity. I think that is that like invitation to continue to grow. And then that mindset piece again around abundance and deficit. I think with job seekers, really, I find myself just really encouraging people to stay in that abundance mindset. When we operate out of a deficit mindset, we can have that like scarcity that drives our bus and or anxiety that's driving our bus, and we want like abundance to be driving our bus so that we're making decisions from a really grounded place. having that growth mindset where we're thinking about like kind of like what could be and how we can grow, and then being rejection proof, because if you've been in the job search for a while, you know that there's lots and lots of applications out, and that weren't my experience of job seekers is that the opportunity for a chance to interview or for that one job, there's lots of rejection before we get the opportunity. So being rejection proof of like understanding that this process will likely hold a lot of that. So opportunities there for sure. And I just even want to pause that meaningful transition requires time. And when I'm talking with candidates who've experienced a layoff, or when I think of just transition again in my own life, I'm wanting to expedite this process because the uncertainty is really uncomfortable. But to make like thoughtful, meaningful decisions, it does require time, and we can't fast forward that. And I think that can be challenging. So I talked about doubling down on our well-being. As I mentioned before, I helped develop some content on the well-being class at a university that I've been at for a while and have taught for several years in this program. And I'm convinced of, again, looking at my own life, of just how there's an interconnection between our well-being and different dimensions of well-being. So I think of our physical well-being, one of those factors as sleep. And when I don't get enough sleep, I'm prone to that. I know that area of my well-being directly influences my emotional well-being. So I'm more likely to be kind of like on edge and more reactive emotionally when I don't get as much sleep. That impacts my cognitive well-being because I don't think as sharply, and I feel just kind of like more stagnant. I also see ripple effects in my social well-being. I'm less likely to engage in people around me when I feel tired. My spiritual well-being, I feel less spirit-led. I find myself like getting through the day and like surviving the day instead of saying like, God, what do you have for me today? Where can I see you at work and join into that? And that's just one like area of my well-being. If I have not slept well, I see the ripple effects in lots of ways. And of course, that could be true in kind of all these other areas. But the interconnectedness, I think, is part of our invitation right now too. Speaking of our well-being wheel, as we think about occupational wellness, that can really provide a lot of like nutrients. Our work provides a lot of nutrients for us, and I want to outline that on this next slide. So when we're at work, we have that sense of contribution. We often are working with other people, so we have connection points. We experience perhaps like meaning and purpose in the work that we're doing, or even just the achievement of checking something off of our list. And so when our work well-being or occupational, like those nutrients are not there in a season, it's just important to find other ways to reactivate those nutrients. And so I would love to see people type in the chat how you could or have reactivated those nutrients. And so I think of things like joining a book club. There's an opportunity for some relational connectedness or engagement, or starting and like learning a new skill so that you're building in an area of like achievement, creating those to-do lists every day to, again, build in where there might be some of those kind of like missing nutrients out of our well-being wheel, if you will. So that would be something to kind of keep in mind as you navigate the transition. And then I think about how important it is to have people along the journey. And so often thinking about a personal board of advisors during significant transition. And as we think about career transition, hiring a career coach or working with a therapist, leaning into mentors, reaching out to your support system, whether that's friends, family, former colleagues, building that personal board of advisors if you don't have one. So looking for a professional mentor, connecting with other job seekers. Crossroads is a great opportunity, among others, to kind of like build in that relational piece. We know that that's So key for our well-being. Keep the key relationships with former colleagues that are adders to your life, and so fostering those. And so then my invitation for this group is who are 3 people that you could list on your personal board of advisors or your job search council that can really be an asset to you in supporting your mind, body, and spirit during times of transition. Okay, then this is some of the mechanics of preparing your search. And as you think about getting application ready, like just taking account your resources. And I recently read the book Chatter, and one of the things that stood out to me in that book is that when we experience something that feels like that is a difficult circumstance, we are more likely to see that challenge as an opportunity if we feel resourced than a threat. And so I think it's just so important to find and lean into resources so that we feel like equipped for the challenge versus kind of like that threatening feeling. So I do have some resources at the end of this presentation, but I think the resources are really kind of specific to your job search and could be specific to your circumstances. But a couple of the resources I know in Minnesota are the Minnesota Dislocated Worker Program through DEED. And people who have experienced a layoff have access to career resources there. So I think that is one resource that could be helpful. And there's general resources like LinkedIn or salary sites, Teal HQ. But if you have favorite resources that have been helpful to you, I know as I lead job search groups at Carlson, people will share podcasts that they're following, or Jeremy Schiefling, for example, is somebody in kind of the business school field that people follow. He is a thought leader on LinkedIn. People like that, who and where can you find resources that so that you feel really equipped in this process. In addition to that, I think when we've experienced transition, or when we've experienced whether it's like a branch that has been cut, or again that trunk, it's a really good time for reassessment and kind of reflecting or assessing on what you want next. So some questions that I think can be important are what is work that gives you energy? What drained you in your last role? Where are kind of your ideal work environments, functions or teams of interest, industries and geographies of interest? So just doing that kind of like reassessment so that when you are starting to search, it's a really directed search. I know that with the discomfort of uncertainty, it can cause us to move kind of like before we're ready. So, and I know everyone's circumstances are so different too in terms of variables around financial necessity and things like that. But I do think reflection is a really important part so that you're aiming in the right direction. And then getting application and interview ready, the mechanics of that, of updating your marketing assets. So developing your story, your personal brand, being able to explain why you're in search mode, updating your resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, getting those star stories ready, and then leaning on your personal board of advisors for feedback. You want to be an undeniable candidate. And so having really firm and clear, really firm and clear story around what you want to do next, so that when you are applying for jobs, there is clear alignment around the roles that you are seeking and what you bring to those roles. So that is certainly a time investment there. And at the end, happy to answer any questions. But again, that personal brand or those stories are pretty specific to your circumstance. Then there's the act of actually launching your search. And this, of course, can look so different for each person. But as I think about executing your search, I think about like kind of like that 2 hours a day where you have a plan, you're treating it as work, you have measurables, you measure those inputs, you're keeping track of your networking and your applications, so that you have some structure around that. something that I hear from candidates is, oh, I'll find a job on LinkedIn, and I can already tell that like hundreds of people have applied. And so I'm not going to put my name in that because it's like, how would I stand out there? But you can't get a job that you don't apply for. And so if you do see a job on LinkedIn, we recommend applying actually on the company's website, no matter how many people have applied on LinkedIn. And we don't know how many people have started the application or how many people have just like clicked on that are like influencing those numbers. So don't let that deter you. But having like a good plan, of course, is going to help you. And then as I think about the day-to-day process, again, at Carlson, we talk about researching, networking, applying, and preparing. And that would be the format for executing the search. So researching companies, networking, I'm going to talk about that in a minute here. Working on application process, your application materials, and then preparing. So as I talk to job seekers, sometimes there is a tendency to lean into one of these areas more, kind of based on your skill set or where you have energy. So I think it is a good question to just kind of check on your day-to-day process. Where are you getting stuck? Is it in the research? Where do you need more support? Are you feeling like you have kind of like what you need to network or to prepare? And where might you be over-indexing? So I recently spoke with someone who said that they find themselves spending their days researching because there's endless opportunities for researching and very little on applying, and just kind of over-indexing on the preparedness, but not getting enough inputs on actually applying to roles. Other times, people are bypassing the networking process, and actually, I find that to be really common, where they're not networking, but they come to me saying, I've applied to 50 jobs, I've applied to 100 jobs, and I'm not getting the call back. And then my first question is, what does your networking process look like? And the networking takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy. So if you find yourself cold applying to multiple jobs without some of these other pieces to check off that list, but you're not getting the traction, then you might be over-indexing on the applications and need to kind of back up there so that you're doing really good networking for that. But as I think about kind of like the day-to-day process, the energy would be directed to one of these circles and multiple circles, kind of like wherever you're at in the process. And then I find that during times of uncertainty, just having some type of checklist. Of course, the job process is not just this linear process, but here are some checklist items. Identify your top 15 companies or organizations, and then find people at those organizations. I think LinkedIn is a really good spot for that, to set up some networking chats, to let people know that you want to work there, that you have interest there. Set alerts on job search sites so that you're kind of seeing what's out there. Crowdsourcing and doing kind of just being aware of industry trends. Looking on Indeed or LinkedIn, kind of having those kind of go-to spots can be really helpful. And then letting recruiters know you're seeking on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, there's the green banner that some people put on. I think everyone's kind of in different spots with how they want to do that. But even if you don't use the banner on LinkedIn in your About section, or you can click on letting recruiters know that you have interest there. So developing a solid plan to guide you to have some of those checklist things during what can feel like an ambiguous process. Harry, stop me if there's some questions coming through. I can always answer, but we certainly will have time at the end as well.
Nothing so far. Sorry for clicking in and out there. I hit the wrong button.
No problem. Okay. If you're going to over-index somewhere, crowdsourcing and crowdsourcing for career insight and networking is going to be where I would have my greatest recommendations, because we know that that is the best way to get your next opportunity. And what I find is that people don't like doing this because it does feel ambiguous. And so there's a book that I'll have in my recommendations called the 20-Minute Networking Meeting. And that really can be a great guide for setting up networking conversations and asking people for 20 minutes versus a coffee chat or a kind of meeting up for happy hour. That's a harder yes for people. But when you ask for 20 minutes of their time, that can be a easier way for people to say yes, and then treating that time as crowdsourcing. So if I were to reach out to somebody and ask them for a job, that feels intimidating, uncomfortable, and it puts the other person in a tough spot too. But if I think of this as crowdsourcing, where I'm looking for career insight, and that is what I'm asking for, it shifts the conversation substantially. So I think about how we recently just had to buy a new washer and dryer. And I reached out to a couple friends who I knew recently purchased one too, to crowdsource, to get some insight into what they liked or didn't like about that as I thought about making a purchase. Over spring break, my family went to Arizona and we had not been there before. So I did some crowdsourcing from people that I know who have been there to hear what they liked and didn't like and what recommendations they'd have. So if I think about how I would crowdsource for a random purchase in my home or a 1-week vacation, I certainly want to crowdsource when it comes to my career, where I'm spending all my a lot of time, energy, and effort. And so I think crowdsourcing puts us in a seat of gathering information. We're seeking advice and insight, and that shifts the conversation. As we get insight, so maybe we reach out to somebody at an organization that is of interest, and they share with us, like, I know right now our company is downsizing or experiencing layoffs. This would be a harder time to find an opportunity. That information is really helpful so that you can steer your efforts in another direction. Or if they say typically people get into our organization through a referral, and I'd be so glad to help you with that. Or typically people would get into our organization through a third-party recruiter, and this is kind of what that process looks like. Or here's what I know of industry trends. That can be a really, really good guide. I would say at the end of a 20-minute informational interview to ask if there's anyone else that they'd recommend that you connect with as you continue your search. And then hopefully that will help snowball your informational interviews and your networking contacts if you can get a kind of like a warm lead from somebody else in that process. And then again, always following up when you're doing crowdsourcing with gratitude and a thank you note to stay in touch. Another way that I find the crowdsourcing piece to be helpful, not only will you get that career insight as you navigate your search, but if you talk to somebody today who works at an organization that you want to, and they don't have any openings right now, but in 2 months you see an opportunity posted on their site, it is such an easy way to reach back out to someone to say, it was so great to talk with you in May. Really enjoyed our conversation. As I mentioned before, I did see an opportunity at such and such company, and I'm excited to apply. That can be a really great way to kind of reach back out to let somebody else that you've already networked with. So when I am talking with candidates that I'm coaching and they say, like, I've done all these networking calls and it's not leading to a job, I think to myself, not yet. But you don't know kind of what seeds you planted that will be watered. And I have so many career stories of people who have had conversations and it's months later where an opportunity arises because of an opportunity or a connection arises because of that networking conversation. So pour a lot of time and energy there. People will sometimes tell me, like, I just don't really have a lot of people in my network, and so that's making this hard. And I do think about like your kind of specific industry area where you have maybe past colleagues or past classmates. And so another whole presentation could be on how to utilize LinkedIn to find people from your university or from your previous work areas. But for today, I just want to focus on kind of the basics on navigating transition. But in addition to people that might be in your immediate network, I really encourage people to think about their entire network. So I'm a big fan of, as an educator, of mind maps, because I think it can be a really great way to do a brain dump. And so in the middle of a mind, this is an activity you could do. You could add this to your checklist, write your network, and then make these thought bubbles of areas of your life. So whether I put on mine friends, family, former coworkers, my church, my neighborhood, some classmates. But from there, when I'm writing out my family, I don't always think of my family none of my family members are in my industry, but I don't know who my cousin might be connected to. And during a job transition, reaching out to my cousin to say, hey, I am looking for another opportunity at a university to work as a career coach. And I'm curious, do you know anybody at your university? Do you have any contacts? And again, I wouldn't know who my cousin is connected to. My next door neighbor is not a career coach, but works as a social worker, and I don't know who she's connected to. So for me to say, hey neighbor, I'm in a job transition. I'm looking for connections in higher ed. Do you have any connections in higher ed? I'd love to just be like expanding my network during this time. And then my cousin or my neighbor or the person I go to the gym with or somebody at my church is going to have personal investment in my career journey. And so the hope would be that perhaps my neighbor could offer an introduction to me. So I think people are really surprised when they sit down and just write out people that they have in their network that could be assets to them in the job search, even if they're not industry specific. So Steve Dalton is one of the many people that are kind of thought leaders, career experts, and he talks about these kind of like third tier connections. So often people in our first ring, which this would be kind of my first and second ring, might have connections to people in that third ring that could be really helpful to me. And so that is a networking strategy during transition that can be really helpful. I do want to say, though, that it usually takes several reach outs to get an informational interview. So if you are doing some of our LinkedIn best practices, reaching out to people. So another strategy that we would use to reach out to somebody if they went to Carlson to say, hey, I found you through the Alumni Career Network. Curious if you open to a 20-minute phone call. I'd love to hear about your work and any career advice that you would have. You have to reach out to 10 to 20 in order to get kind of an informational interview set from that. So I just will offer that as a way to not be discouraged. So cast the net really wide in order to get those follow-ups. And then the way that it snowballs best is if people, after you get them, would continue your process through that warm handoff. But I sometimes meet with people who are feeling discouraged because they're like, I'm doing what you said, I'm doing what the book said, and I reached out to 10 people and I only heard back from one. And it was like, okay, that sounds right. That statistic tracks. And so this is where you have to do like a full court press on reach outs to people. But knowing that this is such a helpful strategy is like, it's time and energy well spent. Okay, I'm just going to check the chat here to see if there's anything. Oh, great. Thank you so much. Okay, another strategy that I want to highlight in when we have a tighter job market is thinking about multiple career paths. And if you find that in your industry, you're just not seeing a lot of opportunity, considering more than one path and staying open to adjacent work. And this work doesn't have to be your long-term, but it could be kind of in the short term, helpful to you as you consider your next step. So sometimes when I'm connecting with people, they're like really locked in on a specific opportunity and they're not seeing that traction. And so just kind of thinking about being open to other options can help expand your network. That said, using the lane change or career pivots are a bit more difficult when the market is tight. So when I reference staying open to multiple paths, I'm thinking about it like adjacent work. If you want to make a lane change, I would just say that can end up taking a little bit longer. People do it. People make these career pivots, but when we know that the job market isn't hot, When I say lane change, I'm thinking about changing lanes from in an industry, from function, organization, or geographical location. And every lane change takes a little bit more time and intentionality. And that's where networking is so important. So if I'm wanting to make a sweeping pivot, I'm going to really need a networking connection in order to do that, or I just need to be prepared that it could take more time. So I think as you navigate a career transition, this could be a really good time to make a career pivot, but your career story, you'll have likely the most traction where you have experience. And so just something I would offer as you think about your change. And then I'll conclude today and spend a chunk of time here talking about how to maintain motivation. So you set yourself up really well. You know your financial runway, you have things in place, you're tending to that root system in your mind, body, and spirit. You've prepared for your search, or you've done that self-reflection to know where you want to go so you can direct your search effectively. You're launching your search by doing kind of like our best practices and strategies. But then the career search, especially right now in this market, is taking a while. As you know, if you have been in this process, it's taking longer than people wanted to. It always takes longer than people wanted to. So maintaining motivation, I think, is really, really critical. So let's focus on that as we wrap up for today. I've been really into the concept of career agility lately. I think there's ways that ways that I think we can think about career in a linear format. Like, I got this training, I got this job, it's going to lead up this escalator of success, and it's really linear. And for most people, it's just like not the case. Maybe in previous generations it's been. So lately I've been adopting this mindset of thinking about career, not from this escalator linear perspective, but as like a kayaker who is needing to stay really flexible, adaptable, kind of forward thinking, navigating with kind of the current that we find ourselves in. And again, kind of going back to we just focused on some mechanics, but this mindset piece of staying really agile. And I think we need to in these career times. And so I think that mindset can help us stay motivated, because if we're wanting it to be this really linear process and that's not how it is, that's going to breed frustration. And so, yeah, so this is my model is kayaking through the waters. And then as we think about recognizing patterns and adding structure, of course, we need to be realistic that our energy is going to ebb and flow throughout this process. And some days we'll feel more energized and we're able to get more done and see more results. Other times we're just not feeling that energy and kind of like recognizing where we need to take breaks too. I'm a big fan of permission slips. Brene Brown, someone I respect a lot. I've read a lot of her material, and she talks about giving ourselves permission. And so some permission slips I need to give myself are like permission to not be perfect, because I'm not a robot, and I'm a human who has hard days and is low on energy, or permission to give myself a break for a day, to take a day off. And sometimes particularly during transition, it's harder for me to access kind of that permission to be a human in this process. So I'm curious for you, what permission slips do you need to give yourself today or in the days to come as you navigate this terrain? Treat the job search like a job. And I work with job seekers who are like, I get up every day, I have the same routines, I get dressed, I'm showering, I'm like at my computer at a certain time, so that I'm like adding structure to my day. That feels like a work day. That really does help a lot of people stay motivated. Of course, everybody's different, but setting daily, weekly deliverables and goals, kind of those checklist things to stay motivated. Building in some type of accountability is really important too. So some of my job seekers will have just like built-in walks with friends or coffee chats, or have added some kind of type of community builders so that there's that communal investment, but then also finding ways to keep accountable. Investing in those self-care routines, which I know we talked about already. Celebrating success is so important, and even celebrating kind of small wins. So keeping track of that in some way can be really helpful. And then when energy is low, offering up those reward systems of like, hey, after applying for this job, I'm going to go do something really fun, or I am going to go make a connection or invest in a hobby, so that I'm kind of keeping those momentum going. So in the bottom of my slides, I'm just continuing to offer questions of when your energy or motivation is low, what have you found to be helpful? And are there ways that you can like build that in so that momentum and motivation is continuing to happen? And then when you get stuck, doing some good reflection on what is coming naturally to you, what's feeling uphill, what do you need? I find in career conversations I'm having, sometimes people need to focus on where they do have control when life is not feeling like there's a lot of control. Where do you have choice? Where do you need some confidence, clarity, community, creativity, and compassion? Just a list of C's for you there. Focusing on how you'll feel when you secure your next role can help us get unstuck too. So maybe like presently we're not feeling the way that we want to, but like that forward thinking and vision casting for the future. That's a part of career agility too, is like kind of staying focused on a vision. And then to adapt, what's not working? If you're submitting all kinds of applications, but you're not securing interviews, is there something about your process? And I would say for the work that I see, oftentimes that networking piece is missing. Or if you are getting those HR screens, you're getting those first round interviews, but they're not transitioning to second round, then do you need to do some more work on your storytelling and how you're branding yourself in an interview, and doing practice or mock interviews? And that can be done certainly through career coaching, but there's a lot of really good AI tools to do practice interviews that way too. So there might need to be more prep work or more reps in your preparedness. So that reflection, adapting as necessary, is going to help staying and maintaining motivation. I mentioned being mindful what's in your control and what is out of your control. And I just really like this list because it's a reminder to us of what we can focus on during our days. So I can't control how my application is picked up or not picked up, or if there's an internal applicant, or if there's somebody in an applicant pool who has stronger qualifications than me. But what I can control is what my marketing materials look like, and doing the best that I can. I can control my attitude. I can't control the weather. It looks like we're going to have a lot of rain, at least here in the Twin Cities. I can't control that, but I can control how I'm structuring my days around the weather that's around me, right? So putting your energy into the kind of the areas where you do have control, I think can be really helpful, again, with that mindset. Now we want to make sure that I leave room for some questions today, and I have a couple that I'm going to walk through that I get frequently, and then we'll leave room for questions from you too. So one question that I get after people have experienced a layoff is, how do I explain my layoff on my resume, cover letter, or etc.? The biggest thing I would say here is that you are the author of your story, and you get to craft this narrative. Our recommendation is telling the narrative from a positive, growth-oriented mindset. Certainly, there's a lot to whatever your layoff story is, and likely there is some frustration there. But I think it can be really helpful to actually write this out. So when you're having a 20-minute networking meeting, or you think of like kind of your elevator pitch or the tell me about yourself in a job interview, what do you want people to know? And it can be a really good practice to write out that version of what you want them to know. And I find that there's the first draft of like, here's all that happened. And then the second draft of it's like, here's how I'm framing this as an opportunity. So one example could be during a company-wide layoff. I was impacted by a company-wide layoff, and during this time, it allowed me to reassess what was important, where I wanted to make an impact for my next career opportunity. During that time, I networked, I participated in several different opportunities to grow my skills and use this time to reconnect with my network. That helped me to identify where I wanted to go next, and then explain that during that tell me about yourself, or during your networking conversations. And then not only what you did to leverage the time well during your layoff, but what you're doing to move, what you're moving towards. So this gave me further clarity that I do want to be in this industry, making an impact in these types of ways. In terms of your resume, I just encourage people to be honest about when your role ends or did end. I think sometimes people are wanting to shapeshift that, but when recruiters are looking at resumes, if there's confusion around it, or if there's kind of confusion in an interview, people make up their own story with that. And so just providing clarity, it would be my encouragement. And you can definitely list a career break on your resume too. So that's going to be, again, unique to everyone's circumstance, but those are a couple of things that I would offer in terms of how to explain time of career transition. And then I get this question all the time: how long is this going to take? And certainly there is such a range, but I would say most of the candidates I'm working with it's taking about 3 to 6 months plus for their search. I would say that even in an interview process, don't let up, keep searching, because I would imagine people on this call can relate to this, that sometimes an interview process does look really promising, and a recruiter says, we'll get back to you next week, and next week turns into 3 weeks, or they're setting up a follow-up interview, and that follow-up interview takes a couple weeks out. And so I have seen job seekers get really hopeful as they go through an interview process, and maybe they're even down to being a final candidate in a process, only to learn that they were not selected, and then missed a 5-week window of their job search. So I would say stay on the gas until you get that offer, because it is taking job seekers months, not weeks, to find their next opportunity. And I know I referenced this before, full court press, like really, really stay on it. Cast your networking nets wide, and really staying kind of proactive in your search process. I will say, though, that every industry does look a little bit different on how long it's taking, and even roles or even level of experience is impacting that process. So, of course, it is unique, and it only takes one offer. So we don't know when that's going to be, right? It could be in the first couple applications you put in, but it might be. And for a lot of the candidates I'm working with, they're involved in a longer search process. So again, as we enter into a process that can feel long, and that's where we need to like really fortify our root system, and make sure that that is really strong as we go through that. So I wish I had more clarity on that, but the reason why I think it is helpful to talk about how long it takes is because when people schedule with me, they'll often say, like, I've had a really, really successful career, and I think I'm doing all the right things, and I'm not. I feel like I must be doing something wrong because I'm not getting traction. But just for me to normalize like the experience that it's taking all the job seekers that I'm working with longer than what they want, normalizing it can be helpful, because it can be reassuring that you're not doing something wrong. We can always be adapting our strategy, but even doing all the right things, it's taking most people a few months to find their next opportunity. And I also think it's just a good reminder too that during a time of career uncertainty, we can get in our heads a little. And so just being careful of the story that we're telling ourselves. So the story that I would want job seekers that I'm working with to hear is that you're a great candidate in a tough market right now, and that you have a lot to offer. And so kind of being, like I said at the beginning, rejection proof here, and just like recognizing that the process will likely take longer than we want it to. Another question that I get is, okay, like where are the best places to look for a job? I linked, and I think Carrie put in the chat, a couple places, but it really depends on your industry of kind of like where those best places to look. But I would kind of double click on LinkedIn because that is the largest job posting site. And there's a lot of filters and preferences that can help keep non-relevant jobs filtered. And so in my practice, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. And but I do think that there's a lot of job sites that can be helpful. So wherever you're seeing helpful postings, and it can be really important to follow kind of like industry specific ones, but here are a few of many that I just wanted to offer this morning. And then I do have some book recommendations. I love listening to books. And I did talk about the 20-minute networking meeting in this call. Another person that I reference a lot is Steve Dalton. And again, I'm working primarily with people in kind of the MBA business school space, but I do think a lot of these resources are very transferable. But Steve Dalton, worked in a business school, so some of the lens of his work is coming from that. However, yeah, there's a lot that can be taken. The Job Closer, I think, is my favorite book right now. But I also really enjoyed reading Phil Terry's book, Never Search Alone, and that inspired me to start some job search groups at Carlson. Phil Terry has a Never Search Alone network that I think can be really helpful, and it reminds me of just the incredible resources at Crossroads too. So I am so glad that you're here, that you're jumping into job search groups that Crossroads offers, and the resources there, because we don't want anyone to go through this process alone. So I've just been really inspired and encouraged by what Crossroads is offering for you in that. And the message that I take from the Never Search Alone book is that how can any job seeker find community in the search? And then how can you make sure that you are doing your part for networking, that you're using the best practices, and then developing those really good career stories. So those are some suggestions that I would have in terms of resourcing. Okay, and I wanted to end here. And then I'll open it up to any questions that this group has. But we started the slides with looking at trees. And I've been thinking a lot about trees lately, because I think we're seeing in color here again in the Twin Cities after there's that like transition window from winter to spring where everything is brown, and we no longer have like beautiful snow on the ground. It just is brown and gray. And we had a lot of cloudy days there for a while, but now we're in a stretch of sunshine, and we're seeing in green and bright blue skies again. But this image has been really helpful for me to think about how God uses transition in our life. And even when something has been cut and there is that transition, and there's loss in that, a loss of what was, and this image is a reminder of what grows. Like our root system is there, and God is going to use that in our lives to grow something new. And I am completely 100% confident that wherever you are at in your search, something else is growing, and that you will get that next opportunity, and that God will use that in the process. So I just want to end on such a hopeful note, and I get to on the regular basis journey with job seekers in processes that have been hard or painful, or longer than they've wanted them to. And I've also get to see kind of what happens on the other side, and what happens in the midst of our search, and what grows within us as we do that. So I do want to leave you with that. But are there specific questions that I can help answer? And again, I don't always have specific answers, but I can do my best to respond.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Was so much great advice in there. No questions per se. We've got a couple of good comments. One is just as you were talking about motivation, and Brittany commented that that is the hardest, that discouragement and mental health struggles really kick in, and that becomes, and I've seen it too often where it sabotages people's job search when they get discouraged, because nobody wants to hire an Eeyore, right? It's they want somebody that's optimistic and forward looking and encouraged about new opportunities, and that's difficult. I think you have to be much more disciplined about managing your mental state and emotions every day than you would when you're in a job. In a job, you kind of have your routines and you're almost on an autopilot, but now all of that is thrown out. What other thoughts do you have on that? I think that is a struggle. And then, as she mentions, struggling with trusting God in that process as well, because he's got a plan for us, but it might not be the way we picture it. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I can just, yeah, really appreciate, because I hear talking to job seekers, that's how I always spend my days. I hear the struggle with motivation, and I think I often describe the job search as a roller coaster, where there's kind of this like anticipation of like, oh, I found this really great job, and I'm kind of like waiting to hear back, or I get the interview, and there's like a lot of momentum to prep for it, but then I'm like waiting again, kind of at the top of the ride, and then to be like, oh, I get the call that they move forward with another candidate, and it's like, oh, um, that I think can just be really exhausting, to be like on this ride that you don't know when it ends. And I know, at least for myself, that when I'm in a season where I don't know when it ends, I think that part is where like trusting God in the midst of the unknown is, where I've really had to lean in and ask for help in that, because I think when we know something is hard but it has an end point, there's this almost like way that we can like rally to be like, I can do anything until July. I can do anything until this endpoint. And I do think like when we don't know how it ends, there is like a different type of trust, and like a different way we have to stay motivated. And I really do think we grow a lot in that. And so I am not in a season of job seeking, even though I'm supporting a lot of job seekers right now, but I certainly have areas in my own life where um it's feeling unknown, and there isn't a like clear deadline of how this is all going to work out perfectly and get wrapped up with a bow, and I don't think life always works that way either, but um during as I think about those areas in my own life, I really have grown a lot, and it's like the leadership training class, the resiliency class, the faith class that I didn't sign up for, that God is using in my life, even though it's like not the one that I opted in for.
What are some ways that you stay in the right state of mind during those challenging times in your life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think when I notice that things are coming out sideways, um, that to me is almost like the kind of like the check engine light, for me to recognize that I need to be attending to something. So when I find that I'm like really edgy, or like a small thing is I'm having like a big reaction to, or I'm finding myself feeling like kind of like envious of other people, or those for me are some of my like check engine that I'm like, oh, internally my root system is like needing some care. And I have like really found that leaning into my support system has helped. My personal board of advisors are people that are in my like I call them my home team, people that are pointing me back to my values, my faith, what is most important to me, reminding me who I am, reminding me who God is, have been like it's really significant in those seasons, and in current situations that I'm in, that it doesn't feel like wrapped up in a bow. But when I can pay attention to the sideways behavior, it does help me to put like to like reinvest in those spaces. And as someone who wants things to keep moving and moving quickly, I do have to like remind myself to like kind of like slow down and be open to the growth that that God is doing. And my default can be like step really hard on the gas. When for me, I have to like hit the pause to do some of that internal work, or it comes out in like more of a frenetic way or like kind of like a desperate way. And desperation smells. People can feel like if I'm doing networking, or if I am telling my story when I'm not in that place, when I haven't done that work, it does have ripple effects that I don't always want it to. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
it's humbling, right? I mean, I think when we're in transition, it can be really humbling.
Yeah, and that's not a terrible thing, but you got to put it in perspective as well. And you know, I think how you start your day has a great bearing on how the rest of the day feels. And so I think the tendency for a lot of people is to pick up their phone first thing in the morning and look at whatever emails and texts they have, but they kind of let the outside world dictate what their day's going to be like. But if it's good news, that's great. But if it's bad news, your day's ruined. And so spending time first thing in the morning, whether it's in scripture or prayer or reading something else that's motivating or inspiring for you, I think has a great bearing on how you're going to respond the rest of the day as well.
I agree. Yeah. It does, like that's how we stay grounded.
Absolutely. Just more comments from her about the fear and uncertainty of the unknown is challenging, and that God does use these times for shaping us and growing our character. I totally agree. Many things that you mentioned in there that I think are just so spot on, and taking that time initially to do that, some of that self-evaluation and thinking about, you know, where you've thrived in your career in the past and why, and where you've maybe struggled in your career and why, and helping you define better what it is you're exactly looking for. Because when we don't know what we're targeting, either everything looks good or everything looks bad, but we don't have a specific thing, or we don't ask the right questions in the interview process either. And so I think that was great advice. And then that mind map of who do I know, of who are all the people in different areas of my life that could be potential networking contacts for me. And as you described, you know, how you've heard so many stories from people's job search, me too. And it always amazes me that how many times people get the best lead or contact or idea from the least likely person. You know, they think they have to only talk to people that are potentially hiring managers or in their field or industry. But sometimes it's the person next door over the fence that you think, you know, they don't even understand what I do or anything, but they say, oh, you got to talk to my brother-in-law or whatever. And it turns out to be an ideal situation. And so don't dismiss any opportunity to talk about your job search with people.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Somebody mentioned BJ Fogg is the author of Tiny Habits, and said to start the day saying it's going to be a great day. I agree. Getting up and forcing yourself, no matter how you feel, you know, even if I've had struggles with my back lately, getting up first thing in the morning, it doesn't feel like I want to say it's going to be a great day. But when you intentionally do things that and say things that put things into proper perspective and speak what you want to happen, you're more likely to land in a better place. That's great advice. Any other comments or questions for Nicole? Give another moment here, but Nicole, thank you so much. I think there was just, as I said, so much great advice and insight in all of that information. And I hope people got a couple of tidbits that they can incorporate into their job search that'll help the process go a little bit faster or be more effective. And I think the thing you emphasized multiple times is just how critically important the networking process is, because just applying for a lot of jobs is draining and doesn't produce much. And I think that process, personally, I think that process has gotten worse in the last 2-3 years here, where people are just getting far less response than they ever have before. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but just relying on applying and applying and applying, it just does not produce a lot of results.
Yeah. Yeah, and the process, I think the process can already feel hard. So I want people to be as strategic as possible in the process. So doing kind of the best practices on what we know is the best way to get a job. And we know that just cold applying isn't the best way. Does it happen sometimes? Yes. But it isn't the most strategic strategy. So knowing that this takes a lot of energy and perseverance, I want people to put energy where it is gonna matter the most, and that they're able to structure their days and their time in a way that feels sustainable. So developing those tiny habits or putting kind of structure to your day or making sure that you have these really helpful extras in so that you are maintaining motivation in your process. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing is I've been a recruiter for 38 years. And so I've seen really bad times. I've seen really good times and everything in between. And in the scheme of things, we're actually in a strong job market right now, but it's harder to land a job, I think, than it's been in a very long time. And it's kind of a paradox in that way, is that there are jobs, there is hiring going on, but how to find them, get them, and land them is much more difficult than it's been. And so you have to be talking to people. Got just comments of thank you and the Lord's been blessing her with some of the networking opportunities and things like this. So grateful for your time this morning, Nicole. And I want to take just a few minutes here to give an overview of everything else we offer through Crossroads as well, and have you take advantage of as much as you can. Some of it is remote, some of it is in person, but as much as you can get plugged in and form that community and get the moral support, as well as the content and the strategic and tactical options to be able to make your job search more effective is important. Let me share my screen and I'll run through a number of things here quickly. Here we go. Everything we offer through Crossroads is detailed on our website at mncrossroads.com. You probably went there to register for this today, but if you haven't spent time kind of perusing everything else that's there, I encourage you to do that. We have a number of different things that are going on at any one time. We have a job board on there. There's a lot of local companies here in the Minneapolis area that know what we do and post jobs on our website because they find great people here. And I get feedback from companies that they've hired a number of good people off of our job board, which I'm encouraged about. And so take advantage of that. Pay attention to the things that are there. It's not as populated, obviously, as LinkedIn or Indeed, but there are a lot of good jobs. Interesting enough, I mention this all the time, but the state of Minnesota is one of the biggest posters on our site that they have jobs posted all the time that they hire people off of our site. So I'm not sure how that came about, but I'm glad it does, and people and that works out well. There's additional resources and a number of events, and I want to just give you an overview of what things are available for you. Kind of our cadence for these seminars and topical presentations on for your job search is the first Thursday of each month is in person at Grace Church in Prairie. And we have a topical presentation like this. Then we have our networking group that meets in person after that from 9 till 10:45. And then at 10:45, we have a couple of things that go on. We have Brad Markwell comes to answer any questions and talk about financial considerations during your job search, and in terms of what do you do for budgeting, or what do you do for 401k plans, or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of things to consider when you're in transition like this as well, because your budget changes, your income obviously changes. What you do with retirement funds is important during this time, and so he can address those things. And typically we also have a micro job fair. We have a couple of companies maybe that come in and talk about positions that they have available, and you get a chance to meet with somebody from those organizations. And so take advantage of that if you're in the Twin Cities area. Every first Thursday of the month at 7:30 a.m. at Grace Church in Eden Prairie. The second Thursday of each month is in the evening is at Woodbury Lutheran Church. We have another topical presentation like this. And then the third Thursday of each month is an online webinar, which you're at right now. And so you can see what we have scheduled coming up on our website for that. On a weekly basis, we also have ongoing things throughout the month. We have our Networking with Grace, our networking group that meets each week. And it's a great chance to share contacts and leads and ideas for your job search with each other, support each other. And that's at 9 o'clock every week. The first Thursday is in person only at Grace Church, but then every following week each month is online through a Zoom meeting, not a webinar platform like this, but a Zoom meeting where you all see each other and can talk. And so Wes Tang on our team leads that, and he does a fantastic job of making sure everybody gets something each week. So be sure to check that out. The details are on the website. And for the online meetings, you need to sign up in advance, but it's a great way to continue to stay plugged in, get encouragement, but also get some concrete contacts and leads and ideas. We have one-on-one coaching available. And so if you would like to talk to one of our volunteers about anything related to your job search, whether it's talking about your resume or an interview that's coming up, or better networking, or do mock interview practice, or anything at all. I mean, for a lot of people, it's just kind of to talk through their situation with somebody that gets it. You know, friends and family might be encouraging, but don't necessarily get what's going on. And so getting a chance to process where things are at and get some additional input and ideas and support is always welcome. So you can sign up for that anytime, as often as you'd like. The details are on the website. You sign up, fill in the form there, and one of our volunteers will reach out to you to set up a time for a Zoom meeting or some kind of conversation. We have a team that is just great about praying for you, and we have a soul care team that can help in more concrete ways. If you have a prayer request, you can put that on our website, or if you'd like to talk to somebody on a more regular basis for a little while, you can sign up for soul care. You can see the details on our website, and I'm just grateful for the team that has a real heart to support you from a spiritual perspective that way as well. The meat and potatoes, though, are where you can get the most online help, ongoing help is through our online classes. We have an 8-week small group class that covers every aspect of a job search, starting with attitude and getting in the right frame of mind, which we've talked about a little bit this morning, and doing some assessments to get some better self-awareness. What makes you unique, and what are you specifically looking for, and what makes you thrive in your career, et cetera, so you know what you can target. We talk about networking a lot because it's so critical, and how to target companies. And we talk about resume best practices and interviewing situations and skills, negotiating, selecting, and so much more. And we have great content that can be really concrete help for you. But I think equally important is just that weekly light accountability, check-in with others that are in the same boat, knowing you're not an island, getting some encouragement and moral support and some fresh ideas to help your next week be more positive and start off on a right foot. And throughout the 8 weeks, we talk about what's God's perspective of your job search in your life as well, because I think that's just so critical in this as well. So we have a new class that starts each month, and we've got one coming up. I think we've got an abbreviated version coming up here in June. It'll be about compressed into 6 weeks, but you can see the details on the website and register there. I really encourage you to take advantage of it. Even if you've been in one of the classes before, you can jump in again with one of our other facilitators that you might not have been with. Everybody, we cover the same topics, but everybody brings their own style and flavor and additional information into it. So it can be really worthwhile, but just that ongoing encouragement and moral support, I think is important too. So take advantage of that. Check out the details on the website. Join our LinkedIn group, MN Crossroads Career Network. If you put that in the search box on LinkedIn, you'll find us. And there's a ton of great information in there. But more importantly, we've got, I think it's over 2,700, 2,800 people in there that have been through Crossroads, that are just staying in the group to be available as a network contact for others that are currently looking. And so you can look through our members in the group and see if there are people at companies that you might be targeting, and reach out to them for any advice or insight or possibly referrals in the organization that they're working at now. And then when you land in a new job, stay in the group and be available for others to reach out to you too. It's a great way you can give back. And it's a great way to get help in the meantime too. So join our LinkedIn group and take advantage of that resource. This webinar and all of our previous webinars from the last few years are posted on our YouTube channel. And if you put MN Crossroads Career Network in the search box on YouTube, you'll find us. And there are dozens and dozens, probably hundreds at this point. I haven't counted them up lately, but of webinars from over the last few years, and you can find all kinds of job search topics that can be helpful in this process. And so you can spend your evenings curled up on the couch with popcorn and watch job search video. I just hope it's a good resource for you, and this will get posted hopefully before the end of the day today for you to be able to review this as well. I just want to acknowledge we have actually over 40 people that volunteer for Crossroads in one way or another, and it enables us to do a lot of different things that one or two people wouldn't be able to. And I'm grateful for all of them, because it's just keeps us being more of a robust resource. And so you can, as you encounter any of them, I encourage you to thank them, because it helps us to get a lot of things done. If you don't have a church home, I encourage you to visit one of our churches, Grace Church in Eden Prairie or Woodbury Lutheran Church. There's the websites on the page there. You can watch streaming online, or certainly encourage you to come in person to get some great support and teaching and spiritual growth in this process, because I think the more support you can get, the better. But our next Crossroads seminar will be in person only at Grace Church in Eden Prairie. So if you're local, I encourage you to come. Thursday morning, June 5th. I'm really looking forward to this one. Scott Welly is a international speaker, and does a lot of corporate events and other things that talks about outperforming the norm in your job search. How do you really perform at your best level, stay motivated, and be the most effective? And he's very good. If you haven't seen Scott before, encourage you to come and check it out. And then that that Thursday is also when we have our in-person networking group and micro job fair. So hope you can join us at Grace Church in Eden Prairie on the 5th. Best wishes to you in your search. I hope it's shorter rather than longer, and I'm glad you were here today. I hope it was worthwhile. And I will let me knock this down, and hope to see you again. Take care. Have a great day.